Make the Pledge of Allegiance, if you can please rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So it looks like the first item we have is superintendent's update. So go ahead, Allison.
Great, thank you. Do you mind queuing up the slideshow? We're going to start off the update today with an acknowledgement of our Eagle Scouts for the 2025 year. Is it 2024 or 2025? I'm not sure when exactly this officially happened. But here this evening, we have Travis Knox and David Dame, who are going to tell us a little bit about their projects. But I also wanted to acknowledge Oscar Hubbard and Hunter Felton, who are off at college, who couldn't come back for this. Travis, I think I have your stuff first, if you want me to have you kick it off. You can come on up.
And see.
Yeah, and if you get right up here, they can hear you on the slide.
Okay. Hi, I'm Travis Knox. I want to correct the slides. I did not work with Oscar Hubbard. He had his own Eagle project. I did something completely separate. My Eagle Scout project was building a tomahawk throwing range for the YMCA. What's it gonna? Alrighty, so about 9 months ago, I did my Eagle Scout project, where I worked with the YMCA and we built 4 tomahawk throwing targets so they could use them in their upcoming years during their summer camp program. Why I chose the YMCA is because I feel that many people in our troop, they always did the same thing. It's like bog bridges are a very common Eagle Scout project, and I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to do something unique, something not as like commonly done. So that's why I turned to the YMCA. Once I got there, they didn't actually have any specific like projects already set out. They had just a list, and they kind of gave me that and said, oh, you can pick what you want to do. And I considered a few options, and the main one that stood out to me was the tomahawk throwing range. All right, so up here, here's us building it. If I remember correctly, there was a team of 8 or 9 of us building that June, and in one day we were able to construct the 4 targets. Try to find a picture of all of them. So here's a picture of 2 of them. If I remember correctly, it rained, so we took the picture before it started raining when we had all 4 done. But so we were able to do that, and it was pretty cool. I'm very proud of the project we did, and I've seen at the Y they've put them in place, and I'm sure they'll be used this summer at their summer camp program. That's pretty much it. That was my project. Then it took another few months to get the paperwork all done. Here you go.
I have for you.
Yeah, do we want to do both of them and then we can do the photos? Yeah.
Any questions?
Make sure you just push the right button there.
All right, my name's David Dame, and just like Travis, I recently did my Eagle project. Just like Travis, 9 months ago, I started my project, and when I was trying to decide what my project was, I remembered back to one of my first campouts where I was just making small talk with one of the older scouts, asking them what their project was. And Liam Johnson, some of you here may know him, but he made a gazebo near one of the reservoirs. And I didn't really know what that really meant at the time, or like the significance of anything the Eagle projects were. Most people make bog bridges and things that last a long time. I see the gazebo now, and it's still like something that is held up to this day, and I want to do something similar, which is why I decided to do a theater or a puppet theater for the local library. The way I met Bernadette, who pretty much told me, hey, we need some stuff here. It could be a wheelbarrow for the books or stuff like that. I met her when I was doing some pancake ticket sales, or some ticket selling, and when I was selling my tickets, she just approached me and said, hey, are there any Eagle Scouts who are looking for a project to do? So it was kind of a coincidence that I even had the idea to begin with, but after meeting with her, I've decided to do a puppet theater, and unlike Travis, I was a little bit more on a time crunch, so a lot of the help I got doing it was through the school with Mr. Parsons. So big thanks for Mr. Parsons for helping me out with the project. And if we see up here, was the project after it was already assembled. I had some of my friends get together with me and some other scouts, and we just painted the thing almost in one day in my backyard. Here we see we are applying the coat after we applied the primer. It was a really nice day when we did it, so it went a lot smoother than I thought it would, because I had some troubles when I was actually putting the wood together. Here's the finished project of the colors for it. We decided to make it a lot more compact. You can really see it in person if you want to go down to the library and check it out. We made it big enough where kids can just play around with it and everything else. And the library took some creative liberties towards it, so where they've added little Velcro strips onto it where they can pretty much add whatever they want on there, and kids can design it to really make it whatever it is. So yeah, in all, I think the project turned out pretty well, and hopefully I'll be able to go back there in like 5 years and still see it standing and not demolished by the children. That's all.
I'm going to give all the committee members to ask any questions they might have or just extend their congrats. Steve?
No, very good. Thank you.
Jane?
Yeah, congratulations. And I know these projects are the culmination of so much work in the Boy Scouts that starts even before Boy Scouts, right? And one thing that is just on display today is all of the public speaking skills that you've gained throughout this. I know I visited a Boy Scout meeting once years ago and was blown away that it was led by the Scouts. And so all of these skills that you've assembled through all of the patches that I see and culminating in the Eagle Scout project, just congratulations, and it'll be very useful for you in your future.
Jacob?
Congratulations. I'll second Jane here. I know this has been a long journey for the two of you. Can you tell me, when did you start scouting, and how many, and maybe mention some one fun memory or activity that you've done in this time that you could, experience that you don't think you could get in a different organization?
So I started back in late sixth grade. I'm pretty sure that was around 2018 or around then. And I've been going from there pretty much the entire time. COVID happened, there was a really slow year, but after that, I've just been active through it the entire time. And probably one of the biggest memories I have in it, it was when I got lost in the forest with two other scouts at the time. One of them was Travis, actually. And it's that whenever I think of scouting, I think of that and like how fun it was, even though it was a little scary, but when I think of scouts, that's probably the biggest memory I have about it.
Thank you. How about you, Travis?
If I remember correctly, I crossed over late into my year of fifth grade, so that was 6-7 years ago at this point. Wow, time really flies. My favorite memory in scouting, it's hard to pick one. I've done a lot. I've been to Maine, I've been to Virginia, done all of that, but I think one of my biggest memories I remember is probably one of my first campouts when I crossed over. I think it was my first turkey feast, and I remember I made Connor McLeod really angry when I hit him with a snowball in a shark tag. David might remember that.
I remember that very vividly, yes.
I remember I was absolutely terrified of the then junior in high school chasing after me with a hunk of ice. But that is still one of my fondest memories of scouting.
He threw the hunk of ice at my tent later.
Well, thank you, guys. I'd love to talk more, but we have more items on the agenda. Great job. Congratulations.
Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, congratulations to you both. As an Eagle Scout, I went to 32, not 100, so here in Westborough, though, both my brothers were Eagle Scouts from 100, so certainly understand, the amount of work that it takes, and, I can tell you certainly that this is something that you will carry forward with you the rest of your lives. So just congratulations again on all the hard work, and looking forward to what's next for you both, so thank you.
Regan, you have anything?
Oh yeah, just also congratulations. I think these projects are awesome. I love the community involvement, how it's something that's going to stay for years to come, so.
Yeah, so I'd like to congratulate you as well. This is awesome. I've seen this in the library, so I definitely saw it. The colors are so beautiful on there, so I definitely remember seeing it. I want to ask you both a question. What would you identify as being the most important skill that Boy Scouts and then Eagle Scouts has taught you over the years that you've attained as a result of being one of those or all of that?
I think one of the bigger skills I've learned from it is definitely leadership and public speaking, kind of, because I think right now I'm pretty confident when it comes to my speaking, especially in front of crowds, and I'm also able to communicate with children a lot better because of how many of them I have to deal with as one of the higher leaders inside the troop. So out of those two, I'd probably just say like public speaking and leadership skills, I'd say.
Great.
Something I've taken out of scouting is definitely like responsibility and taking initiative, even if you don't want to do something. There's a lot of things I've had to do in Boy Scouts where I haven't done them out of choice, but out of necessity. It's like not just for myself, but because it needed to be done. And I think that's a really important skill I can take away into life, that stuff needs to get done, even whether or not I want to or not.
Thank you so much. So I guess,
Sarah?
yeah. Oh my.
I have a trivia question for you. Who founded the U.S. version of Boy Scouts? Do you know?
Powell.
No, that's the English version.
Oh, okay.
W.D. Boyce in Chicago. Look it up.
All right, I'll look that up, don't worry.
That's it.
Coming up. Cool. Do you guys all want to come up and we can take a picture?
Thank you.
No. This is awesome.
I don't know. It's just a tradition.
Go out with a bang.
Well, so I wouldn't be in front. Like, I didn't want to be behind. That would be more creepy.
Did you get to Eagle?
Yeah.
Good for you.
My two brothers were both like, my grandfather was an Eagle.
That's a great one.
That sounds good.
Good boys. 100.
I asked Travis on his way if the axe throwing facility was open for school committee retreats. He was not sure, but I'll keep checking that out. Next, just on a quick update about our hiring processes. You know, we have two major hires going on right now, one for our Director of Student Services, one for Assistant Superintendent of Schools. On the Director of Student Services front, today we were able to announce finalists. Thank you to folks who are on the committee. We have two finalists, Meg Garvey from right here in Westborough, and Jeffrey Lapin, is it Lapin or Lapin?
Lapin.
Lapin, from Sudbury, both in kind of building level roles where they're kind of, they've had stability and lots of experience in that role and are kind of ready for the next step. And one great opportunity I want to talk about here is they will be doing site visits next week on Wednesday and Thursday. Both of those site visits will start with a parent-caregiver coffee at the Borough from 9 to 9:45. So coffee, treats, and an opportunity to meet these candidates, ask some questions, and have a little community forum right there in the morning. They have a very full day after that. They'll meet with many groups, tour a few of our school sites. meet the student services building level coordinators and the district office staff. And then at the end of the day, they meet with me and Anita. So we'll be wrapping up. And there's a Zoom forum for them with all the faculty as well. So they've got their work cut out for them next week, but we're excited and they seem to be excited too. On the assistant superintendent front, the posting closes soon, I believe the 30th, which is Sunday, yes, and then we'll launch into the search process, and we've got a timeline set, so interviews will be completed and an offer made by April vacation, if all goes to plan. That search, we have a lot of candidates coming in, and they look very strong, so that's good news. Other roles are off and running. I know we've made a few hires already at Gibbons for folks who are retiring and things like that, so just a quick snapshot. I wanted to share something. This is just a kind of new hot news that came from the start of the week. Our ELL director, Letitia Broomfeld, has reached out to the EL department in Braintree, and they've formed this kind of collaborative partnership around professional development and sort of supporting student learning. So the director and teachers from Braintree came to our high school to observe our program in action. And the goal is to do this sort of exchange and learn from each other and sort of improve everybody's game over time. And also to do some collaborative work around professional development. Sometimes for teachers in some of our niche kind of job roles, it's hard for them to find good PD, and they can band together and work together, and it actually increases our impact over time because we can partner with Braintree and actually save money too. So it's a good deal for everybody. But you see the team there and then some students that they were interacting with. I wanted to note that we have a technology update in our next meeting, and I thought this was important just because we've had some public participation around technology use in the district, and John Green will be coming next time to do a more full-blown and detailed report. I will probably add in my 2 cents as well, and some of the things we'll want to talk about there are our device deployment. What do we have in the district? What kind of safeguards do we have in place? Things that we do to protect student data, things that we do to protect our students from inappropriate content. We'll talk a little bit about how technology is used in the district, our attempts to make sure that it's used in a balanced way and an ethical way, and also impacts that we see or believe we see on student learning. I will say, measuring outcomes of student learning, it's hard because you can't isolate the variables, right? I think it's, there's so many things that change in time, but we do have things that our staff notice and that parents notice and that students notice over time, and also just things that you can observe with students, boots on the ground. So we'll talk a little bit about those things as well. And then my final item here, I think it's my final item, yes, is I wanted to, first of all, thank you as the school committee for your kind of guidance and support, and having gone through the first budget cycle that I've been through here and my first annual town meeting here. I appreciated your kind of wisdom and support for the schools. I wanted to share with you in terms of the operating budget what our next steps are. We're right now in the process of doing all our final updates to the budget book so that all that information is up to date and online and clear and transparent for the public. We are looking at our preschool enrollment, monitoring kindergarten enrollment, and our high school course selection process, because we do need to make decisions about those reductions, and those are things that are in play. So for example, as I had said before, if our preschool enrollment does come up and trends toward up, we may be able to use that money to offset some costs at the preschool and perhaps even pull back some of the reduction. I don't think we're going to cover everything, but if we could cover one position, that would be great. In addition, those course enrollment choices at the high school will help us make some determinations about elective offerings that we can support and those that we might not be able to this year. We're going to start really early to try and project what our level services number is for FY27. I want to have that clearly in mind by the end of the summer, certainly, but before if we can, because we need to go into collective bargaining with all our bargaining units next year. So we need to have an idea of what the cost of opening our doors next year is, and also look carefully at opportunities we might have to regain things that we're having to reduce this year. And then finally, a big project that our finance team will go through is moving to the Department of Education aligned chart of accounts. It's just bringing us into alignment with the type of categorization scheme that other districts use. That's going to lead to greater clarity, but also greater comparability, I'm not saying that word right, comparability with other districts, so that if folks look at the DESI reports and see that, we are spending X amount of dollars as compared to our neighboring districts. Right now, we're having to take our reports and sort of reconfigure in a scramble at the end of the year report. If we move to this chart, it'll just roll right in. So it's a nicer, neater, and cleaner reporting mechanism. So those are the pieces on the operating budget side. On the capital budget side, we're springing into action around creating a bid for the Milk Pond chiller design work. We already have a bid in hand for the Gibbons floor work, so that's a matter of just getting the schedule sorted out. That's an interesting project because a chunk of that money is for the floor, but some of it's actually for pulling the bleachers out and taking out the divider and all that kind of stuff. So, but it's a great time to do it because we're paving, and so we can kind of do all the work, Armstrong and Gibbons paving work, do the floor update, and we're keeping those sites clear this summer from programming. So we'll just take care of everything in one fell swoop. And then finally, developing a prioritized timeline for that HVAC work that got supported at town meeting as well. So that's kind of all happening right now as we respond to town meeting. And those are kind of my updates for today.
Thank you. I think you're going to move into the strategic plan, correct?
Yes, I shared this with you last time, and so really this time it's your opportunity to discuss, provide feedback for the district, provide feedback for me, ask questions. As I had said before, it breaks down into different themes, and that these are kind of messy working documents. This is where we're kind of recording what's happening in real time. And one of the things you'll notice is there's some overlap. Some of the same things that appear in the teaching and learning part also appear in the relationships and blah, blah, blah.
Can I interject for a procedural question here? I think we skipped an agenda item. So,
we did.
Yeah, so we have the curriculum update that we're going to do on literacy curriculum.
That was a big agenda.
That is a big agenda.
It's a big agenda.
And they're sitting right here.
And we have.
Oh, you guys are so nice.
Thank you, Daniel.
So
I apologize.
If that's okay.
They have their own.
It's just one of my many fails, so that's okay. All right, if you guys can come up with I imagine you're going to have them come up with the writing curriculum.
Come on up to the mic, and I'm going to give some context for this. And why don't you bring up 2 additional chairs, and I'll introduce you guys. But let me first give some context in that this is a report that we're going to give you based off of basically a final report of a literacy review project that was presented to the school committee back in June of 2023. So this group is kind enough to come for a third time in front of the committee. They first came back in June of 2023, and last year gave you an update of their implementation at the end of last year, and then they're coming again now. And let me just give you a quick introduction of who our literacy leaders and department heads are that are here tonight, and then I'll give you some more context. So Aubrey Zitzman is actually new this year, doing an amazing job, K3, pre-K3 literacy coordinator. Stephanie Nephew is our grade 4 through 8 literacy coordinator. And then at the high school, Cheryl Tucker is our department head there of the English department. And then Jen Nottingham is our middle school department head of the English department. And they have worked very hard this year to implement the second year of recommendations from the report. I just want to give you the context that our curriculum leaders and department heads play this vital role of, there's several things they do, but one of the most important roles is making sure that our curriculum and our assessment and our instructional practices are rigorous, that they're up to date, that they're exemplary. And the way to do that is to periodically have these in-depth reviews looking at our curriculum and our practices and bringing together, they brought together a group of teachers and members of the special needs department, the ELL department, and spent a concentrated amount of time reviewing what we have in place and comparing it to best practices in the field, and then basically making recommendations for what over the last 2 years they've been working on implementing. Some of the recommendations had to do with changing our phonics instruction at the early elementary level, changing our assessment practices in some very fundamental ways, working on updating our reading curriculum at the secondary level. In particular, there were some changes that they were making around nonfiction reading and some diversifying our canon, if you will. And then as far as this year in particular, the second year of implementation, a big focus was on our writing curriculum and making some significant changes there. So they're here tonight to fill you in on the work that they did this year. I'm sure that we're all more than happy to answer questions on work from the year before. I know that some of the members weren't here for the initial delivery of the report back in 2023. And then if there's anything in terms of context that you guys think I left out before you start talking about writing, feel free to do that. But I'm going to turn it over to the four of them now, and we'll take it from there.
I think one of the areas that we really wanted to focus on, one of the challenges in writing instruction is sort of the nuanced differences in terms of skill set from one grade to the next. And so when we did our committee work, a lot of conversation came around how can we provide resources to support clarity around, what does narrative writing look like in 5th grade, and then how do you progress and move the complexity to the next grade, and how do we provide some real clarity around what that might look like. And so last year, what we did in grades K through 6 was to develop some additional resources for teachers to support an increase in clarity and expectation. We provided I can statements that really tried to provide some very concrete sort of skills that we were hoping kids could have at each grade level. We provided annotated exemplars so that we could actually see those I can statements in action. And we also provided some anchor units that would articulate sort of a series of lessons that would provide some structure around how we get kids to achieve those skills. So last year we were very busy creating materials. We introduced the materials to teachers in the spring. And so this year was really about the implementation stage of these materials and sort of using them on a daily basis. So some of the things we did was really strategically provide some professional development. During some of our professional development days, it was targeting some of opportunities for collaborative planning of the units, so teachers had some real understanding of sort of what they look like. We did some calibration sessions, so sometimes looking at student work using the rubrics that we had created to really ensure that we all were sort of seeing the same thing. In sort of small group sessions, I had the opportunity to work with individual 4th and 5th grade teachers on a weekly basis to actually do that daily planning. So I could really sort of see how those anchor units were sort of working in the classroom. Also had an opportunity to do some model lessons, be able to be in the classrooms to watch it in action and look at student work. We actually just had a meeting at Mill Pond on Monday where we did a reflection on sort of how things went this year, sort of what the materials provided for us, what we think are future next steps. So really, it's in the beginning stages of the implementation, but I feel like
it has provided some clarity. It has provided some concrete sort of information to help guide our work. So I think that so far it feels like it has it's had an impact.
And at the K-3 level, when these units were developed, and the 4 to 6 level, a big thing that they kept in mind was the vertical alignment piece, to make sure that students were having a different experience in each grade level with the different genres of writing, while also being able to build on the skill set that they developed in the year previous. So that word clarity is perfect. It really has provided a lot of clarity to the teachers for what they should be doing in each grade level and what are the common experiences that the students of Westborough are getting from school to school. So at the K-3 level, I had the opportunity, I was not part of creating the units, but I have been part of the implementation process. And so all of our professional development sessions this year have been around writing. Each grade level has had at least 2. Some have had more sessions with me to talk about rolling out these new units. They've gone over just basic best practices in writing instruction. They've had time to dive deep into the units and really look at what they're asking students to do. Similarly, we've done some rubric calibration and looking at student work and making sure that we're all on the same page around our expectations. We also revised and tweaked the rubrics a little bit to make sure that we were measuring and looking at what we wanted to. And then a big piece of the K-3 professional development has been around content integration. So in the elementary level, in the early elementary level, it's a jam-packed day where we have teachers who are expected to teach all the subjects. So where can we get the most bang for our buck is to really kind of integrate some of these subject areas together. So when we're looking at our nonfiction writing, how can we tie that into science or social studies? When we're looking at our opinion writing, how could we tie that into a content area unit? And grade levels have done great work with that. So if you're ever walking the halls of the lower elementary buildings, you'll see nonfiction writing. In second grade, it's a persona unit where they take on the persona of the topic they're writing about. And so you'll see examples of students taking on the persona of a continent because they were learning about the different continents in social studies, or the persona of an insect because they're learning about the insects while doing their going buggy play. So there's a lot of great cross-curricular connections that are happening. So that's where we're at for K-3.
I will say one of the things that we focused on K through 12, or I should say 3 through 12 really, was looking at specifically writing in response to reading, and sort of this idea that writing is thinking. And so when we're reading and we're sort of, we have sort of this metacognition of what's going on, being able to articulate that in writing and what that looks like, and really thinking about the progression of skills in addition to when pen comes to paper, but also prior to that. So the really strategic work we do simply in our conversations with kids, in interactive read aloud and book clubs, and then how that transfers over into readers' notebooks, where it's a little less formal, and then moving that into a more formal piece of writing, articulating sort of their thinking around the books that they're reading. And so Aubrey and I actually got to do some professional development with third grade, and sort of thinking about that progression and how it moves from third to fourth. And what's been really cool is to be able to see how it goes from third to fourth to fifth to sixth. And we've been doing the work, and I'll let them speak around what that looks like 6 through 12. And so really getting to see sort of that progression in action, and really naming sort of what it is that students are doing to move sort of to the next level.
So I'll speak to our work in grade 7.
Just bring the mic a little. You can bring it closer to you.
Okay. So in grades 6 and 7 and 8, pardon me, it's been really great work, like Stephanie said, because of all the work they did last year, creating their I can statements based on the standards. We were able to then kind of just continue where they left off. And Stephanie has really helped us to take the standards, turn them into I can statements. We worked in my department with all of my teachers looking at those standards at both 7th and 8th grade level, having really great discussions about okay, what are the writing strategies, the elements of writing that we focus on in 7th grade, and what are the areas of writing that we focus on in 8th grade, and is there a clear progression from 7th to 8th? And we spent time editing and revising those ICANN statements, and we feel really good about the progression from 6th to 7th to 8th. And then from there, we were able to do the same from 8th to 9th grade. The other great thing that we have done is we've really focused on the literary analysis essay. So I was able to ask members of my department to submit all kinds of student examples. And from there, we chose specific ones from 7th and 8th grade that we felt were exemplars. And we worked together to really analyze both of them. And are we actually seeing everything in the ICANN statements, in the standards, within those exemplary pieces of writing? And we annotated them, both pieces of writing, and we were able to see the actual evidence of what we aim to teach them in both grades, which was really, really great. And so now we have these a couple exemplary pieces of writing that we can use, we can show our students, we can base our own lessons on, because this is where we want our students to be by the end of 7th grade, by the end of 8th grade. And then from there, we did all this work in our writing committee as well, but we then looked at an essay from 8th grade to 9th grade as well. So that's where a lot of great work happened also. And I'll let you speak about the 9th grade piece and the work at the high school.
Jen said, we kind of picked up from last year's work with 3 through 6, had the ICANN statements. At the high school, we did most of that work in the subcommittee that Stephanie, Jen, and I facilitated. We don't have as much of the PLC department time as they do at the middle school, so that really needed to be done during that kind of curriculum time. So annotating, taking that careful look at where are those nuances of that complexity of where do we build, and then looking at those annotated work. We have been able to do an annotated literary analysis all the way up through grade 12. We were able to get through grade 9 in the subcommittee, and then on the March PD day, we were able to work at the high school in our department annotating grade 10, 11, and 12 and having a conversation about that like 8 through 12 kind of complexity. And it was really interesting to talk about, like Stephanie and Jen and I were saying, and she's like, if you could see the grade 3, you would be like, wow, like how much they've grown, right? Because when we first looked at grade 8 to grade 9, we had this moment of like, wow, they're both really well-written pieces, and they're following a very similar structure. And then just as we started to really dig a little bit deeper, we started to understand kind of where that complexity was. And it's coming from not just kind of the expectation around writing, but what they are responding to. So for example, with the grade 8 piece, the piece that they have annotated is beautifully written. We had a moment of like, wait a minute, like, what's happening? But one of the 8th grade teachers said, well, one of the things that I'm noticing is the 8th grade piece is in response to a short story, but our 9th grade piece is a full novel, and it's a pretty complex novel. So talking about like the complexity is also coming from what we're asking for them to respond to, as well as the complexity in the prompts. And that's what we talked about too on that March PD day at the high school when we looked at 9, 10, 11, and 12, the progression that we were seeing. While some of the weaknesses kind of still stay, students struggle kind of with that analytical piece and really being able to articulate it, but we are asking them to increase what they're responding to along the way. So it makes sense that that would still be a place that's still kind of a challenge for many students. So we definitely notice like the increase from like grade 9 to 10 as you see students being a little less formulaic in their writing, definitely responding to a little more of a complex prompt. With our 11th grade piece, it was actually a timed piece of writing. So then you're looking at like writing on demand, and it was also a passage analysis. So looking at a shorter piece, but still being able to make sense of it in a greater sense. And then the grade 12 piece that we happened to grab, they were responding to a James Baldwin quote and comparing it and bringing it thematically with the book that they were reading. So there was definitely like this complexity of thinking that we were asking for our students to do. And in the end, I think we all got to a place of like, if our grade 12 students are producing the work that we were looking at, like we're doing a really great job. And it was really validating work. And I think you had said the same, and I know that at the lower grades you had felt the same way too, that it was really nice to be able to have the time to kind of really dig into student work and see what we're doing and thinking about those nuances of where our instruction is. So it's been great.
I think one of the outcomes and one of the goals that we had was to build a common language around our instruction. And I will just share a very quick anecdote. I had 2 6th graders in my office, and one was looking at his literary essay. He was doing some editing, and a student from a different class said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I'm working on my literary essay." And she said, "You got a claim? What about context?" And she could sort of name all the different parts because there's common language around sort of how we're approaching helping kids understand the parts of the essay. And we are strategically thinking about which part are we really zeroing in on at this grade level, like where are kids at developmentally, what's appropriate, and then moving from grade to grade. So I think that common language is just going to strengthen our instruction and that vertical articulation of our work.
I just want to add quickly that, I mean, this kind of work where you, from pre-K to 12th grade, that kind of communication is just so vital, and so it's rare in a lot of districts to have the kind of leadership that works together to be able to make that happen. But like, you know, if you don't have a progression of expectations that's clear between 3rd and 4th and 4th and 5th and all the way up to the high school, then things start to, like, you know, the communication, the expectation of the teachers and what the ultimate outcome is for our graduates in high school can get very muddled. And this process is just like essential, and they've done a beautiful job with it. So I just want to thank them.
Thank you. Questions, comments? So Steve?
Yeah, I got a couple, I guess. I suppose that the final goal of the work product of the process of writing turns out to be the essay for college. How well do you think our kids do on either that as an example, or just at the average student level, not with those who are very good? I mean, we know we have some very good students in the town, but ultimately, I think our work product of our students when they graduate simply is how well do they do and compare to the equivalent person from somewhere else. So I'll put that question to you first.
And just in terms of like their general writing or specific?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, when we sat down and had that like dedicated space on that March PD day and we're able to look at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, they're writing really well. They're writing with some clarity. They're creating a sense of voice in their writing. They have some ability to play around with things like sentence structure and style, organization. They're strong writers.
That's very good. What feedback do you get from our kids that are out in the world in terms of their, I guess, comparison to their peers, wherever they go, whether it's college or...
I mean, I know at the high school when we have students come back and kind of share their experience, they repeatedly come back feeling very, very prepared, and sometimes shocked by how unprepared their peers are. Many times we kind of hear like, I have so much time in my day, I don't know what to do. Or like, I have these skills and strategies. so like things aren't taking me as long to do, or just being amazed at how some peers struggle with things like note-taking, or even just like the reading and the annotating, and then like doing the thinking, right, that then translates to writing. Obviously, that's a sample of students that come back to us, right? Years ago, we had somebody who did do some research about our graduates, and that also, I mean, it's been a long time since that was done. I can't remember her name. Daniel, you might.
Yeah, I asked for it, whatever, 15 years ago.
Yeah,
and
it's
we
been
did
a
it for 10.
while.
We did these longitudinal studies.
Yeah, and
they were, it was very informative in how our students were doing, felt they were doing, and the kinds of activities in terms of, in addition to academics, they were involved in. But I don't remember her name.
Yeah, it's got to be rewarding for you to see that result. And certainly the idea that there's a consistency of teaching from kindergarten all the way up through high school. Obviously, that's the plan. That's what you're doing. And in fact, I guess to the extent that now it's a cooperative level of effort throughout from your side to actually create that consistency, I think is a great program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for all your work on this and for the presentation. What feedback have you gotten from the teachers? How do they feel about the new rubrics, or have you gotten feedback?
Start by speaking at the K-3 level. I think people are really happy to have some consistency and some common language across the district. I think the biggest implication of rolling out these units is the reading correlation that needs to be done at the lower elementary, meaning that we can't expect students to incorporate text features in a meaningful way in their nonfiction writing if they can't strongly use them as a nonfiction reader. So we've just found that there are some tweaks that we might need to be making to our reading instruction for students to become stronger writers. But luckily I have some really great mentors who are guiding me along and helping them with that. And for the most part, I think the teachers are excited to take on that work as well, that we now have this consistency around writing. The next step would be to bring that towards reading.
I'm trying to now think of all the reflections that teachers shared this Monday. I think that people, for the most part, have appreciated the additional resources. People really felt the calibration sessions were useful in sort of looking at student work and having conversations around next steps for individual students. So looking at this work, what's the next move in terms of growing? I think that in any sort of trying out any sort of new material, it takes a couple years to sort of make it your own. So I think that year one, people really appreciated the material. They're like, okay, now I want to see what kind of small group things I can do, like thinking about sort of how to grow it. I think some of the feedback we provided mentor texts to go with each unit to help so that kids could see sort of models. And I've gotten to some good feedback that had been really, really helpful. So in general, it was pretty positive. And I think that it allows for clearer communication and collaboration, which makes things helpful. You don't have to be sort of doing things in a silo.
Great. Jakob?
Yes, hi. I thank you very much for coming here for the third time and for the report. I read the whole thing. I actually have a bunch of questions. Probably just give you opportunity to give the public a sense of how much work into this. It's a very impressive document. It's well written. And that's how it should be. It reads like an academic paper, actually. I have a new appreciation for this kind of work. I never thought of education in that, from that perspective. So first, I have a question about the committee. I'm very happy to see that both the K3 and or K6 and then the 7-12 committees had the wide representation of different people in the district. How often did the committee meet in this time?
So are you referring to the committee that did the original analysis of sort of the district work and where to go next?
Yes,
So we met monthly.
Yeah, for an entire year.
for entire year. Okay, thank you.
And we've had subcommittees for the last 2 years that have met.
We also monthly after school. So a group of teachers have volunteered to be in subcommittees to do some of the work that we've been doing.
Okay, it shows.
I just put it up for everyone to see the size of the pre-K 6 committee and the diversity of teachers and different experts that were from specialist areas that were on it. Principals, reading specialists, teachers, and then we're still going on the elementary committee there. And then there's the grade 7 through 12 committee, which also had a great diversity of expertise on it. So I'm glad you pointed it out and you saw it.
Yes, they deserve the credit too. The report, there's a quote about the DRA2 assessment. I would like some clarity because it says that the 5 variables were brought up as areas of concern in utilizing DRA2 as our core reading comprehension assessment. And then efficiency and the lack of consistency in scoring across K6 were identified as the core issue of utilizing the DRA2 as a district literacy assessment. So my question is, what is wrong with DRA2? And then, what do we need the alternatives? And what is the effort required? So one of the requirements in the report is to find a replacement for DRA2. So once you find it, what's the process of implementing that?
Loaded question. Wow.
They-
How much time do you have?
It's up to them.
So when we look at the DRA2, it's a leveled text assessment. So students are asked to read texts that are based on certain criteria and labeled as a certain level. So it looks at sentence complexity, it looks at how many words are on a page, it looks at visual support, and we measure their oral reading and their comprehension of that. There is some subjectivity when you administer a leveling text assessment, regardless of what it is. The DRA, the Fountas and Pinnell Bass, any type of leveling text assessment is going to have some level of subjectivity just because it's a teacher and a student one-on-one and I'm scoring your understanding of the text. So when we talk about the lack of consistency in scoring, it's just by nature of the assessment, there tends to be.
Yeah, I mean, similar to this idea of doing calibration sessions with the writing, that is needed on a regular basis for the DRA as well, because the DRA kids are responding in writing. And so each question you're sort of analyzing, is this showing proficiency in understanding this question? And, there's some subjectivity to that. I think one of at least for grades 4 through 6, a big push was because of the length of time that the DRA took. You do read with each individual student, then the amount of time it takes for an individual student to complete it, it would be weeks and weeks of administering this assessment to complete the full battery across all students. And so, you're always balancing the amount of information you get from an assessment to the amount of time you're taking out of instruction, and sort of figuring out if that makes sense. And we really wanted to see if we could do something that was more efficient and equally as effective. So we have implemented, this is the first year that we've implemented the iReady adaptive digital screener. That students are taking grades 3 through 6. And so we are doing that in lieu of everyone receiving the DRA. And it is much more efficient. We get the data immediately. And it provides us both information on fiction, but also nonfiction and vocabulary. It gives us a wider range of information. It is a screener, so if we do see areas of concern, we also then implement additional assessments to sort of dig in in and get a little bit more information. But we have found that it's been very effective in providing the information we need to sort of make decisions around intervention as well as instructional next steps, but also to do it in a way that's a little bit more efficient in the classroom.
And looking at the K-3 level, we also have another universal screener that was implemented, and it was referenced in this report. It's DIBELS, which measures oral reading for our younger students. So we have 2 universal screeners for third grade students, and then we have one for K-2 students, and then things like the DRA and a battery of other assessments can be used as a diagnostic tool to kind of see where those weaknesses are or areas of strength for a student if we choose to dig a little bit deeper.
All right, that was a loaded question. Thank you.
I can keep going.
I can tell. I love the passion you all have for this. So I think I understand horizontal integration, and I think I understand the vertical integration. But could you explain, maybe by example, vertical integration and what happens when there is no vertical integration in the school system? Like what happens when that's not in place?
I can talk about that. You want to talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll actually speak about that. So in the process of analyzing the grade 8 essay and looking at the grade 9 essay, we immediately realized and discovered, okay, well, the grade 8 essay is excellent, but it is based off of a short story. The grade 9 essay was based off of a full text. So it was much more complex of a task. The student needed to be able to analyze an entire novel, pick out evidence from an entire novel, which is much more challenging than just doing that with a short story. And so it brought up really great conversations about our grade 7 curriculum and our grade 8 curriculum, and how, like it's been already discussed, how writing is so tied to reading. And we have been doing a lot of work in the middle school, looking at the text that we are teaching, the units that we are teaching, and trying to align all of our units. And so we realized there was a gap between 7th and 9th grade as far as the essay prompts that are being given and the texts that students are responding to. So in grade 7, students write 2 literary analysis essays on 2 different novels. And so they are analyzing a complete text. 8th grade, their essays are more focused on shorter pieces. And so we want to make sure now that we're continuing that alignment. And so we are in the process already of having conversations in the 8th grade of where can we implement another essay or replace one and really look at the text that we're teaching and see if we can implement a literary analysis essay that is asking students to analyze an entire novel and really look at whether it's theme or other literary elements tied to that unit. So it was really great to see that, and that's why this work was so important. Yes, we can see our students are learning the writing skills that we're teaching them, and we all agree on the I can statements, and we see this progression, and it's really exciting. It was really validating to see that we are really indeed teaching this, but we need to make sure we're also looking at, continuing to look at our reading and the text that we're giving our students so that the complexity of the questions are also increasing and that there are no gaps, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. I think that really explains the need for coordination, because you would not see that if you were just teaching one grade. Right? It's only once you see the whole big picture, you get to see those gaps. How does the district balance consistent writing instruction with room for authentic student voice and creativity in writing? Because a lot of your report is about structure everywhere, but you still want that creative voice. Like, how do you make sure that there's room for that?
So one of the things that we did notice for the 7 through 12, when we did the review 3 years ago, was that a lot of our writing was really in response to literature. So it was very analytical. as well as some informative writing. So one of the pieces that we worked on last year was embedding narrative writing a little more often into our curriculum. So this year that was implemented in terms of a required narrative piece in addition to what was already kind of part of the curriculum. So creating a little more balance for getting out of that like very kind of analytical academic type of writing and giving more opportunity for creative narrative voice.
It was interesting to see the committee come to that conclusion after reading a couple of papers that were generated as like best practices, and they read these papers and then they debated them and they were like, we got a hole here. So, you know, that's how they, you know, and then they wrestled with it, like, what do we do? And, you know, what's the right thing? So that's again, the purpose of doing the review is to have that kind of reflection.
And it,
At the elementary levels, choice is the foundation of all of these units. So although we're telling them and instructing them around a certain genre and we want them to include certain elements, they have a wide variety of choice that they're able to apply to their writing. So the students get to choose what continent they wanted to write about. If they're doing a persuasive piece, they're choosing their opinion that they wanted to write about. Persuasive letters is one, so they're choosing who they'd like to write their letter to. So choice is a really big foundation in that elementary level.
Same, that was part of one of our goals last year as well, was to develop prompts that gave students more choice in what they were writing about, whether it was analytical writing or not. And speaking of the narrative writing, the other benefit to this work is, as we were discussing other narrative pieces to incorporate into the curriculum, we also had the discussion, well, let's make sure it's not the same type of narrative piece that they're writing. So we identified how many times they wrote a personal narrative. We're like, okay, well, that's a lot. We don't need to have them be writing a personal narrative every single year. So what other types of narrative writing can we incorporate into the curriculum? So
Thank you.
that's been great.
I understand that you provide the structure, but then there's room for them to explore and be authentic. That's great. I'm going to skip a few questions. I'm going to take all night. Just one more. The report mentions, highlights a need for authentic writing tasks across disciplines. So what support will content area teachers get to integrate writing without adding too much to their plate?
Well, in terms of like content, I will say that we have done the structure in terms of claims, evidence, reasoning is sort of a structure that we teach kids. They do it at least in K through 6. They do that across all content areas. So embedded in the science and social studies curriculum, there are opportunities where they're doing that kind of writing. And so that is something that's already in place. Years ago now, probably, I ended up with the science coordinator doing a PD centered around the intersection of English, the literature writing and science writing, and sort of how there's the similarities and sort of how you support CER writing. So I think in that regard, there is already some structures in place. I think it's like another conversation to think about how to enhance opportunities for content writing and also professional development, especially I'd say probably moving from into the middle and high school where it may not be like a focus area, but I think that would be exciting work.
Yeah. Well, the idea of writing across the curriculum, right? It's a conversation that just I think is very continuously had, especially at the secondary level. Like the ELA frameworks are not owned by one department really, right? They're literacy frameworks that are owned by all of us. So.
Thank you. I think that makes perfect sense to do it. Question about ELL students, and then one more question, I'm done. Just about ELL students. So we provide this structure and increased complexity, this vertical integration, and all this good stuff. What supports are in place to help teachers to adapt the writing instruction for the ELL students while keeping the expectations high for everybody else?
At the high school, we have a fabulous ELL faculty that are very supportive and available to support teachers in modifying lessons and.
But was any of your work focused on ELL students, or was that not specifically, area of your findings?
It is something that when developing the units, we really did think about sort of how to support diverse learners. Again, thinking about the progression of skills when we have students writing, they first need to be able to talk and articulate sort of their ideas. One of our strategies is just for kids to rehearse before they write something down, right? And so for our language learners, oral language typically comes first before written language. And so providing a lot of opportunity for the oral conversation before sort of writing is really important. Providing sentence stems and sentence frames to help with our English language learners is also something that we incorporate. Again, thinking about the development of these units, and the conversation that some of the teachers had was like thinking about the small group work that we might do after doing a mini lesson, bringing a small group and centering it more about some sort of specific sentence structure or grammar that sometimes English learners might need some more direct instruction on. So really thinking about, using the workshop model when you have opportunity where kids are working, they're working based on what their sort of needs are, and teachers are able to confer with individual kids or bring a small group and sort of meet them where they're at. I also think, we think of this as a progression. Kids are at different stages of the progression. So that idea of when we look at student work, we think about what's next for this individual student, where do they sit on this progression, and how do we move them forward? And so I think that that's something that we also talk about as well.
Up a lot with the implementation phase. So thinking about how do we make these units accessible to all learners. And Tisha, who was mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, has been an amazing resource. We've sat down and talked, and she's walked me through the WIDA standards, so the specific standards for our EL learners, and thinking about where they are and how we get them to the next step. And then the co-taught classrooms within this district are a wonderful opportunity to make sure that the units are accessible for all the students in front of us.
Thank you. That's great. Last question, not related to the report, just, we have ChatGPT, right? We have, all the AI tools around. We have speech-based interactions right now with devices, without even typing and all that. How do you see the future of, of the role of education and writing in this context? And, should it fight AI, incorporate AI, and those other technologies? That's just a general reflection where you think we should go.
We're all going to join Allison's committee.
Which I was going to say, there is a committee that's going to be taking a look at that a little more closely.
Sent an email out today saying, I want you all to sign up. We're doing committee work on this, and really, I think this year has been a big learning year for the faculty here around, what AI is, what it isn't, how it's being used, what it might be good for, what we need to kind of safeguard about. And now we are at the point where we need to kind of pull together and talk about what are the implications for us, what are some guidelines we can develop for teachers and for students, what are policies that might be impacted. I think it's a transformative arrival technology. This just got dropped in our laps. It wasn't by choice, and I personally think anytime something shows up that forces you to examine what you are doing really carefully and think about making sure that the things we're asking students to do to learn are still the right things, I think it's great. I think it's exciting. Then again, I don't have to sort of sit there and figure out who wrote the paper, so I understand that perspective as well. So we're going to figure all this out in the next few months, well, not all of it, but we're going to take a path.
Thank you very much.
Tim, go ahead.
Thank you all for your presentation. I do have less questions than Yakub, so. So the first one, I'm curious, could you talk a little bit about what you see as the next steps from here for this initiative?
Again, at the K-3 level, it would be thinking about the implications for reading instruction that came with the rollout of these units. Looking at the report and the recommendations, we're going to continue to collect those exemplar writing pieces. Now that we have students who are actually completing the writing, we can continue to collect and build up a portfolio of student examples that we can use to have students emulate in the coming years. And then there are just, like Stephanie said, anytime you first teach something, there are just some minor tweaks that need to be made. So that will be some summer work that I'll be doing.
I think the big one that has come out is really digging into, once teaching the mini lesson, what are some strategies, like the specific strategies to meet the diverse learners. So, conferring and doing individual writing conferences with kids and sort of thinking about what the next step is and what lesson to teach to get them there is really complex work. And so, providing as many resources, professional development tools to support that work will probably be sort of the next step in terms of refining the material.
At the 7 through 12 level, we are going to continue working on looking at exemplary writing pieces. So we have focused most of our time on the analytical writing pieces, but we are going to hopefully really examine the narrative writing as well, and then move on to the informational writing. So we still have that work to do and gather those writing pieces and annotate them and compare from grade to grade and see if we are aligned there as well. And as far as 7 to 8, I just see us continuing to look at our reading and the complexity of our texts in each grade level, honestly, and just making sure that we are choosing and teaching texts that are models for the writing that we want our students to be doing, so.
We've also talked, Jen and I have talked about wanting to do a little work around grammar vertical alignment. So that is definitely kind of on our minds. And then similar to kind of what everyone here has talked about, the implementation and the tweaks that come with that. And we've made a lot of changes to the curriculum in terms of new books for people to read, new assignments. So also just being gentle and cognizant of how much change we are asking for people to make all at once, and really kind of encouraging people maybe to focus on a place to change, right, in 1 year, and then kind of building from there.
Sure. Thank you. And building off that, is there currently any plans for like a look back period to just try to evaluate how the impact that this has had on students?
I think we're always doing that, always looking at the different pieces of data that we can collect to sort of see how students are doing. And so I do think that will be ongoing. MCAS is one of those data points that we look at. Kids are asked to do an analytical piece as well as a narrative at every grade level, so we can see sort of the data within the MCAS, but also looking at these anchor unit students do produce pieces at the end of the unit. So sort of looking at sort of the work and sort of what it looks like, and whether we've seen some progress. I also think that some of the anecdotal data from teachers, when I hear teachers talk about, kids coming up and the experiences they had, and do they seem consistent? We have 14 classrooms of 4th grade. So when the kids come up to 5th grade and they're now all mixed, do they feel like the kids had a similar experience? Can I build on sort of the units that were just described? And that's the other thing. All of the teachers have access to all of the material, so they see what the 4th graders had done. And so I think that's going to be also some important information and data to collect. So yeah, I do think it's really important to keep track of sort of how things are moving and progressing along the way. We are at Mill Pond, we did incorporate a couple common writing assessments. So those will also be really great pieces to look at across the grade as well.
And the final point I'll make, I'll just start by thank you all again. So I obviously went through the Westborough High School system here, the Westborough school systems, and I really enjoyed my time. Writing was not my strong suit, but just going to Steve's question, I will say I remember being very nervous my freshman year of college about my first writing class, what that was going to look like, and I remember not feeling very nervous after the first week. So I think Westborough does a fantastic job, and glad to hear that it's still improving. So thank you.
Thanks.
That's feedback.
I think most of the questions have been answered. I do have a couple. So I really like hearing more and more. I'm hearing from the different departments about vertical alignment, which I think is so integral, and I really appreciate the work that's being done towards that. Do you feel that this is also, this new structure that you are implementing in the writing side of it is helping to produce more objective assessment in terms of, I would talk about more the high school and the middle school where grades are quite important in terms of, horizontal alignment within the schools as far as grading is concerned, essentially, is what I'm talking about. Do you think that this new structure is providing that?
Absolutely. I think it's going to be one of the outcomes because when we have real clarity around what the end result should be at the end of 9th grade or the end result should be at the end of 10th grade, it makes, there's more clarity around what the grades should look like. And so, in those high stakes grades, years, I think that's really important. So I do think that that's going to support refinement within that work as well.
Okay, because so you're talking about the end of a grade, but I mean even more so the pieces that you are referring to. Well, I'll go to my next question because this is more involved. I mentioned last year, I know we had talked about the essay piece for the high school students, and I was just wondering if that has been at all, anything has been incorporated to try and make that, a focus piece for
The SATs, is that what you're
No, the essay, college essays?
The college essay, that is one of the pieces that we embedded in terms of the narrative piece for junior year.
Okay, great. So they've been working on that too. That's wonderful. Okay, and then my last question was just really around AI, and I think that I know Allison answered it, but I'm wondering more specifically, do you find in your assessment, not to undercut by any means the success of the program, which I think is all due to the to the work. I'm curious if, and overall in the past couple years, because AI stuff and ChatGPT kind of hit us just about in the past 2 years, I would say, maybe even less than that. Do you think that's impacted what you're seeing in writing as well? I mean, is it a mix of the structure we're employing and trying to integrate into their writing pieces, but then also the improvement that's coming from elsewhere potentially?
I'm going to say no because
Okay.
my demographic cannot use AI. So
What you think?
it's not a concern at my level.
Oh, great, yeah.
Yeah, and you don't see it as much 4 through 6. It's definitely bubbling and it's increasing in terms of kids' curiosity, in terms of using AI. But I also feel like the kids do it's a workshop model. So the kids are writing and working in class and teachers are conferring and working with students. And so they have a sense of their writing and their ability. And so in terms of like kids taking from AI, it hasn't been a huge issue in the 4 through 6. I know that once 7 through 12 happens, it's a whole different situation. But I think that it has enhanced instruction. Like it has the things that teachers have used AI for and like the way in which they're incorporating it to support instruction, I think has been an enhancement. So this like tricky part of how we help kids navigate AI is the one that I think is really complicated. But I do see a lot of success in terms of how teachers are utilizing AI to really enhance their instruction, which is exciting.
What about at the high school and middle school?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like one of the PDs that we did with Greg, one of the articles that he had us look at, or maybe it was a podcast, talked about the Swiss cheese method, right? Like anything that you ask students to do outside of your classroom, it's going to have holes in it. So if you want to not have those holes, it needs to happen kind of in front of you with the constraints that you can kind of put into it. And a lot of us have gone back to that kind of, that podcast and that reference of the Swiss cheese model. Yes, I mean, yes, it is being used. It's quick, it's easy for many students. It's not just on big assignments that some of them are using it on. It's very small things all the way to major things. I don't know if you're seeing the same at Gibbons.
Yeah, I can, so students are definitely using it, but like Stephanie talked about, our writing work mostly happens in the classroom. And we really do get to know our students' writing. And at least at the middle school level, we can usually tell if they've used AI. We also have other tools that will show that to us. Like there's a great extension on Google Classroom that I can actually, I can actually like see all the copy pasting they did, and I can hit a play button and it will show me everything that they wrote. And so at the middle school level, what?
Don't say it too loud.
No, I know.
I was saying that they know what that is too.
They do.
I mean, they proofread,
Yes,
they go through
yes,
it through
yes.
that too, from what I've heard.
So all of us at the middle school level, we have just been having a lot of, honestly, really good conversations with the students about honesty and integrity in your work. And how can we use this as a tool, not as a way to do it for you. And I've even tried in my classroom while they were working on an assignment, we used it as an editing tool. So I created the prompts for them. I said, here's a list of 10 prompts, you can ask it. So, and I said to them, you have to make sure you write, don't rewrite it for me. But I said, one of our goals is to work on sentence fragments, for example. I have 90 students, right? So I'm trying to get to everyone in class. I'm like, so while you're waiting, if you need help from me, here, you can use this prompt, put your piece of writing, I knew they already wrote it, and ask it to identify all of your sentence fragments and give you suggestions, like explain it to me, why is it a sentence fragment? And then I asked the students to come show me what ChatGPT told them, because I just want to know, I'm just trying to learn to see if it's even accurate, if it will do this. And it was very accurate and gave them suggestions of how to improve their writing. So I came up with a whole bunch of different prompts for this one writing assignment that we were focusing on, and they did it in class. And so I just had this great conversation with them. I'm like, here's a way we can use it. And the way we don't want is to just, do it for ourselves, because I have it do it for us it's because you're cheating yourself really out of learning how to write. And I think at the middle school level, they're very moldable, and they're like, okay, and they just want to do the right thing. And so I feel most of them. I mean, I certainly have had a few, but I can count on my hands the kids who I've had to sit down with. I'm like, listen, tell me, do you even know what that word means? And they're like, no. I'm like, tell me what happened and talk to me about why you felt you had to use it. And well, I was, had sports and up late. I'm like, why don't you just talk to me then? And let's come up with a plan so that you can have a little bit more time if you need it. I think it's going to be just so important to have all these conversations with our students about integrity in their work and honesty in their work, and just talk to your teacher and how do we use it as an appropriate tool instead of a way to just do our work for us. So that's what I'm seeing, at least at the middle school level.
Thank you. That was a great answer. So I appreciate that. Thank you. I think that's everyone.
Yes, Reagan?
Oh, I can ask Reagan.
Well, I had the same college essay question, so it was answered. But, yeah, thank you.
I do have a couple of follow-ups that occurred to me while I was listening to everybody else. Have you used your team to analyze the Gettysburg Address or the second Lincoln inauguration speech? It'd be interesting to do and see how your team comes out. Particularly with the tools that you have in terms of his structure and the power of his writing. I think it would be very interesting.
Thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll
Now we
say
should,
one thing
Yeah.
before we move on, which is I appreciate the question about vertical alignment, and I was thinking about that from the student perspective. When you have misalignment in curriculum, what students experience is either kind of frustration or boredom, right? You walk into a class and the expectations are out of whack with what you're prepared for on the one hand, or on the other hand, you walk into class and you're doing the same thing you did last year. And I think the kind of effort that the teams here put in, and this is across all content areas, not just writing. It really is helping us kind of move students to a really high level at the end of the day. So I appreciate that as an opportunity to kind of share a little bit about something that I think I'd like to be able to think about how to help more people understand out in the community. So thank you.
thank you. So I think we should probably do your part now.
Yes.
So strategic plan and mid-year report, let's do that.
Absolutely, and I think I was just kind of saying at a high level that this is a quick kind of opportunity to check in, get any feedback from you, thoughts from you about where we are. And what I was mentioning is you may notice between the different categories that some of the same things come up over and over again. It's because they don't fit neatly into one place. So something in teaching and learning may also show up in wellness and relationships too. In working through this year, one of the things I noticed and noted was I really like some of how the K-3 schools in the borough handled the formatting, and I want to kind of move toward that overall in the future, because I think it's just easier to track where we are and what's going on. It's also easier to show you where we are and what's going on. But generally, my perception is we've got a team working very hard kind of on all fronts and doing some great stuff. So if you have questions, comments, or feedback, I am all ears.
Let's start with Steve.
No, I don't have any.
Sure. Jane, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was wondering, I know this is a mid-year, so some of my thoughts are, what we might want to include just from what I've already seen. So I think, maybe some of these would be included by the end, but just to highlight them.
Yes.
So I think anywhere that the curriculum coordinators are playing a key role, like we saw tonight, it would be really nice to highlight that. And then I also was wondering if any of the coordinators or leads from different units were working together on some of these co-curricular activities, because that I was really impressed by, all the co-curricular. So I think anywhere that the coordinators are playing this lead role, where they're working together, just so we can really emphasize, the product of those roles. I was so excited to see the alternative learning experiences highlighted, and that those are going to be expanded, so that's great. The AI professional development, and then the email today, that's really exciting. I mean, that was a big part of this discussion, so it's so important. I also, one thing that I really appreciate are the wellness bites, and I didn't see those mentioned too much in here, so I thought that would be really nice to mention. And also the collaboration with Westborough Connects, which is, I think, really rich and meaningful. And then another thing that I was thinking as I looked at the community, communication and connection, are we looking, I know when we did the survey for parents around the calendar, one of the problems was a low response rate, and you were thinking you're not sure who we're reaching, or is there a way for us to evaluate Parent Square? And can we just, talk a little bit about that maybe in the end of year report?
Yes.
I saw Parent Square was noted in here, but that might be something to think about. And then I think that was it, but it was really complete.
Thank you. Jakub, go ahead.
Yes, I actually, my first comment was I like the K3 separate reports. They are a lot easier to read and follow. I would love to see that for the other schools as well. I think it's a great format. I was intrigued by the incorporation of science and social studies into ELA curriculum. So this is kind of opposite to what we just discussed. Instead of bringing the ELA writing structure to science, for instance, this is the other way around. And I guess that's just taking the opportunity to teach other material in ELA while you focus on ELA by learning other things. I think that's great. I had a question about the parent square too. How effective is it from your perspective, from the administrative side? From parent side, I know some parents complain that they get too many notifications and all that. I think it's great. If I go back to what we used to get with 3 kids, was constant, influx of papers coming in and getting them lost, putting them on the fridge. That was not effective. So I think this is definitely a better solution. And the last one was, I was wondering, you've been here now for almost a year, and if a new strategic plan is shaping in your head, if you have some ideas, how you want to change the goals for the district moving forward. If you're ready to talk about it, maybe not yet.
That'll be on the agenda next time, actually. And now that we're kind of through the budget season, it's an opportunity for me to gather my thoughts, which are all over the place, and think about that. We have a final year of this strategic plan, so it's sort of a sweep up, clean up, and during that time is really an opportunity to develop the next iteration. I have thoughts about things that I think would be exciting to work on. This is such a strong district, and being able to take what's already here and just kind of keep moving forward is an exciting prospect. So yes, I'll be better prepared to share that next time. But some of the things that I'm thinking about have to do with the articulation of our digital literacy and computer science. Where do we start? How does that flow through the schools? What does that look like? I've been thinking a bit lately about student voice and opportunities for student voice and incorporation of that, especially with our high school kids. I think it's awesome that we have a rep here, and I'm a big believer in student representation happening in a lot of different places. So, I'd like to look at, are we listening to what students tell us about hiring and hiring processes? They're the folks who see our teachers more than any of us do. And so I think those are kinds of things that I'll be thinking about. Some of the things I think you already know I'm thinking about have to do with kind of changes to format and structure of the budget, and that work is out there. And there are other things too, but that's just top of mind, a few things that I can preview for you that will be coming. Yeah.
Thank you.
Tim, go ahead.
My first question, I'm just curious, are you able to speak at all about the implementation of the universal mental health screenings and how that's been going?
I can speak a little bit about it. It'd probably be good to get kind of Kim Tynan, who this is in her wheelhouse, but I think one of the things that I've seen from the reporting out that's happened is actually really nice news. So I'd say there are 2 things. One is having a universal screener is an invaluable tool for schools in terms of being able to very quickly kind of identify and provide support if we do have students that need more intervention and help. So that's one really critical piece. But the second piece is that they are noticing the data sort of trending in a nice direction. And I think that's great news from where I sit. So, but I'd be happy to see if she can come in and give you a little more fine-grained version of it. But.
Sure. Thank you. And then similar to Jane and Yakub, I was also thinking a little bit about Parent Square, and that as I fully understand that we need a centralized way of sending out communications, but just, seeing the survey and that might not reach all parents. So just interested in potentially a conversation there and maybe around an awareness campaign as well. Just make sure that parents are aware of this and using this. This is something that's top of mind for everyone. Then the last comment I'll make is just regarding ESL. I've been thinking about this a lot since we talked about the potential cuts that are going to be coming from the federal level. I know, again, like we do not have a crystal ball to be able to know what that's going to look like, but I know we talked about there being specific teachers tied to some of those grants. Are you able to speak at all on what that might look like and how we might be able to carry forward our strategic plan if we do have to end up cutting ESL teachers?
Yes. Well, so, I mean, I think one of the challenges we'll be facing is that provision of services for English language learners, provision of services for students with IEPs, those aren't options. So those are not positions we can cut. So when the funding disappears, it means we have to look at everything else we could cut in order to maintain those positions intact. Those are sort of not only, I think, an ethical responsibility, but they're actually, there's law in place that requires us to have a number of service minutes for our students. There's law that requires us to meet students' service delivery in terms of their IEP goals. So those are non-negotiables, and I think the unfortunate part is it's really going to impact everything, not just those programs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I actually thought it was really thorough. I read it and I thought that it was very good. I had questions actually about your update for the management operations. So can you tell me a little bit about the coordination of the systems that's happening? That was one question. And then also wanted to know systems with town hall as far as finances and HR are concerned. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
Looking at which ones you're looking at. So the coordinate HR systems. So one of the things that's happened kind of since I arrived, there are two things that have happened kind of one step after the other. One is there's been change in personnel at the town hall side. So they had a HR director leave. They have a new kind of coordinator that they brought on. And I think our team is really excited to try and work with that kind of new person and new structure over there. So I think that's something we are excited about. We had an opportunity to sort of sit down and talk with the town manager and assistant town manager recently about the health insurance because of the all the work that was done behind the scenes around the budget. And it really did give us a chance to look carefully at, how are we working together? What are some places we could kind of partner more effectively? So I think that's a piece, if that's part of what you're asking.
Yeah, that is. I was just trying to see, when you put it up as an update, I was curious as to what the, and also with respect to Munis. So Munis was the software that actually came into, you implemented it, I think, a couple of years, recently, right? A couple of years ago? Or it's a newer system?
There may have been some upgrades to it. We've been using Munis for quite a while.
It's been around.
Was it a new version then or something like that? I don't know. I just remember that when I first came on, there was discussion about how Munis everyone was changing over to Munis in the district. And I don't know if I think there were two systems being used. That's what it was. Tammy had given us an update. I'm just curious, has it been efficient? Was that changeover for everybody smooth? Is everybody, because I see something here about leveraging training on it. So I'm curious about that.
We didn't use all of its capability. That was the issue. In other words, the accounting side was okay, but all the other things that could be done and queried, we weren't that well versed in it. And I think that's what the additional training would be.
Okay.
There's a lot more to it than what we were able to use in the beginning.
We have it. I got a little text from Tammy Costello, who's remotely watching. Hi, Tammy. Thank you. Who said we've had it for at least 5 years, and I some of the capabilities that I imagine, you can use it for purchase ordering, for what's the other piece? Oh, payroll flowing through there, I think. Yep. But actually using the reporting aspects of it, so having it report out, is a piece of the puzzle that can be really helpful too.
Okay. So, all right, great. So that's my question. And then I think we're moving on to, if there's nothing else, we're moving on to the subcommittee assignments. So we shared with all of you what we were looking at for that. And this was, after sort of consulting with you to make sure that these are acceptable assignments. Just want to make sure everybody's an acceptance, so I don't know if we have to take no
I
action.
don't know if you
for that.
vote on these normally, or it just is what it is. I don't know that procedurally, so.
Well, historically, I haven't seen the current list, but generally, the assignments are the responsibility of the chair. I know that last time we talked about this, that you were getting an updated list of what's
Yeah, so
active and
it
what
is,
isn't.
it's there.
And so I guess the next question is, it would be your bailiwick to make the appointments for the scope, the various scopes that are in there.
Great. So I wanted to take everybody's, kind of take a survey with everybody by speaking with them to see what their area of interest was. I think that I've reflected that in the document. So I think if everyone's in agreement with it.
I haven't seen anything new in terms of your appointments, if that's what you're saying.
Yeah, for you,
If you wanted to
Yeah.
read off what appointments you made,
Okay.
I guess that would be
Yeah,
fine.
okay.
we can do that. Can I see your list?
Do you want me to read it? I have it, it's easier for me to read right in front of me. So for sick leave bank, Jane Owens and Sarah Shamsudin. And do you want me to just go through the whole list and then you holler if you have questions? Joint Labor Management Committee, Steve Durrett and Sarah. Policy Subcommittee, Sarah and Yakub. Delegate to MASC annual meetings, Steve Durrett. There's only one Steve now, so I guess I can leave out last name.
That's right, it's a lot easier now.
It is a little quicker to get through here. Capital expenditures is Yakub. State Rep, Tim. Supervision and Evaluation Committee, Sarah. The Pre-K to 3 School Building Committee, Steve and Tim, I think was. And Sustainable Westborough, Tim. Hastings Roof, Steve. Transportation, Tim and Yakub. Land prioritization, Steve. And stipend, Sarah and Jane.
Is Hastings Roof, is that the Hastings ADA?
I think, the bulk of the work on that is complete, but just anything as we finish out the ADA, just probably making sure that gets, everything gets buttoned up.
Steve, some of those building subcommittees are just ongoing work that we're completing, right?
Yeah, and I think to the extent that Yakub and perhaps me are still interested, and of course, there's a meeting tomorrow.
Right,
To discuss where we are on that. Hopefully it's done. I think the deadline for that is the day before school starts this year. And that's our intent, for sure, to see it happen.
Take you off of the committee? Never mind.
No, I'm fine, no, this is
Okay.
good.
All right, so I think that we're clear on that. I think we're good. If we can move on to the next agenda item, that is citizens' requests. Is there anyone here who would like to speak? Gretchen? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the next item, which is school committee reports. Steve?
Well, usually I don't have anything to say on this section except for whatever subcommittee stuff we've been doing. But I do have something now, which is in addition to the appointments you've made. I would like to offer myself, I guess, for these scopes of work going forward, and that's a study and improvement to the parent and bus drop-off for kids in the morning at Hastings. I've heard from a few people that, in fact, it's a zoo and we could probably make it better. And to that extent, I would work with Kelly and with Julia DeGata to work on whatever plan we might be able to bring forward to help do that and make it a little more organized and less painful, I guess, for the parents and the buses too.
So are you proposing a subcommittee for that, or?
No, just as we just talked about for things like the building committee, that I would work with them myself.
Okay, gotcha.
And obviously, anything that comes back, particularly because it would mean we got to do something, would come back to the school committee to discuss. The next one is to provide oversight and development of the Mill Pond Chiller Project engineering for bidding and award. I have a particular interest in that, particularly based on the story that I gave at town meeting in terms of how important that is that we don't drop the ball. And so I know we're on the verge of being able to put together that package for bidding, but there are things that need to be included in the bid and things that aren't that important. And I hope that by working with Kelly and Anita in putting that together, that we can cover the bases that are important for schedule and cost, as well as scope, of course. And then the last one is a review of the Armstrong School for air conditioning, the remainder of the school, which is not air conditioned now, and to develop a plan to accomplish that goal. It is the only school and part of a school that isn't air conditioned in our system. And I think it would be fairer to the parents and of the children in that school to try to get it to where it would be equal to the other schools. So those are three things that I would do in addition to the appointments that you have made.
Okay. Jane?
Nothing to report.
Jakub?
Nothing to report.
Tim?
Nothing to report. I will just put in a quick plug for the survey that is currently out on Parent Square regarding cell phone usage in the schools. So I encourage parents to fill that out if they're able to. I believe the deadline is this Friday. So there you go. So nothing else.
Regan?
Just a few updates on the schools. So all of the elementary schools have parent-teacher conferences that are starting tomorrow in the evening. They're going to continue till Friday. So the students are going to have an early release this Friday on the 28th. Specifically at Hastings, the students have been focusing on empathy as part of the E in their Hastings Heart. For Armstrong, they had a book sale and ice cream social today. That was 5:30 to 7:30. And then for Fails, I just wanted to highlight the nice turnout they had for their parent program of setting boundaries that work. And they wanted to give a thanks to Christine Biggerstaff, Roger Anderson, and Kim Tyan for their work with that. And then Fails is going to have a glow dance April 4th from 6 to 8 p.m. For Mill Pond, they had a ball in the house performance for the 5th graders. This was an a cappella group that performs educational programs for students. The show celebrates the enormous influence of African-American music and musicians, and also delves into how racism affected the music styles in general and how it affected specific musical artists. Additionally, over 400 students are participating in a 6-week after-school club program at the school, and there are a wide range of classes from knitting to songwriting to indoor soccer. It has been a lot of fun, and the school thought that all the students and staff have been loving it. For Gibbons, there is a Micah preview concert at 7 p.m. at the high school for Band 8 in the Wind Ensemble. ELA MCAS is next week, April 2nd and 4th, and their sports are starting up. So baseball and softball are going to be having tryouts next week from the 1st to the 4th, and track is going to begin either April 8th or 15th. Lastly, at the high school, spring sports have also begun with our teams having scrimmages, games, and practices. Our senior class office is having a fundraiser, the Hypnotist Show, which has been rescheduled to Thursday, April 3rd at 7 p.m. Tomorrow at 7 p.m., we have our lip sync competition where staff and students are creating choreographed routines and they're performing, which is going to be a super fun event. And all the money raised is going to the World Central Kitchen and the United Nations World Food Program. And then Micah will be April 4th for our concerts. And then our choir also had a concert yesterday, which was a huge success. And then lastly, there's an environmental action fair from 1 to 4 at the high school this weekend. So that's it.
Thank you. I have nothing to report. So I think we'll move to the last item. I would like to move to approve the minutes from March 12th, 2025.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 5-0-0. So I think we can adjourn the meeting, or do I need?
Motion.
Yeah, motion to adjourn. I'd like to move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 5-0-0. See you in 2 weeks.